Panel. As you can see, I'm chairing this morning because Bernie is not here. I don't think we all know everybody around the table, so if I can, we can do some introductions. So I'm Louisa Radcott.
I'm RSA, the Chief Financial Officer to the Chief Constable.
So Jeremy Vaughan, Chief Constable in my 6th year.
David Holly-Young, CFO for the Commissioner's Office.
Lee Jones, Chief Executive for the Commissioner's Office.
Emma Wolf, Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales.
Paul Jason Davis, Deputy Chief Constable.
Mitch Steaker, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, if everything goes well in this meeting.
Sean Driscoll, Cardiff Councillor for Ward.
Caroline Lewis, Councillor for Meath Talbot.
Sarah James, Independent Member of the panel.
Councillor Bill Smith from the Goodness and Part of Merthyr.
Good morning all, Councillor Bob Harris, RCT Council.
And Simon Jones, I'm a solicitor with the authority and I provide the support for the panel.
Okay, thank you. Moving to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
There are some apologies. Gareth Chapman has given his apologies. Mark Tribe has given his apologies. Bernie Bowen Thompson, the chair, has also given her apologies, but I've had no other apologies.
Okay, thank you. So moving to number 2, any declarations of interest?
My usual one, Chair, just Associate Trainer for Welsh Women's Aid. So,
Anybody else? No?
I know I'm a board member, so if I know that. Just in case they get offended from the...
Thank you. Moving to the minutes of the previous meeting, can we have any accuracy and then followed by any actions or updates? So page 4, yeah, any observations? I think point 25, finance subgroup, I think we've agreed the 16th of January for the finance and subcommittee
That's been
meeting.
arranged.
Yeah. Page 5. No? Are we happy to approve? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. So moving on to agenda item 4, we can hand over to yourself.
Is that the presentation?
That's the presentation.
Okay, I think what you need to be doing now at this stage is putting up the presentation in my emails. Is that okay? Okay. I was meant to be able to access my emails from here. I was before you came in. So this was set up before you came in. So I was going to just hand you the mouse so you could just access the presentation from that.
There's no IT guru on hand, is there?
There's nobody on hand today, but the sounds of it, Bob. It's just me, I'm afraid.
You're running a
Here we are.
company.
Oh, I got it. Right,
Yeah.
so we were Lee yesterday. Here we are. Who's doing it? Mark? Yeah, it's fine. I'll take it.
you want to open it up to fill the screen?
I think you just do it up there, isn't it? Top
Bottom,
right.
top right.
Top right.
Top right.
Top right.
The box there.
I thought it was that's it, isn't it?
No,
Yeah, but
no,
that's
Yeah.
still
to
only.
me.
Oh, there we go.
No, you are right then. It's just that
That one as well.
Just fills.
I was going to fill the whole screen.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
No pressure, is it?
Are we all ready and good to go?
Next slide.
So,
There we go.
right.
I'm there now.
Bore good morning, everybody. Just to set a bit of context for today's presentation, and particularly for our new panel member, as is tradition at this time of the year, we bring to you an outline of force, performance, demand and context facing South Wales Police, and so that you can understand some of the considerations that I will be taking into account when thinking about budget and precept setting over the winter period before we come to panel in February. But before we get into the body of today's presentation, I thought it important that I talk to you about the impact of some national decisions that have recently been made. So I hope you are all aware that for those of you who may not, on the 13th of November, the UK government announced that the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner was to be abolished at the end of our current term. So that would take us up to May 2028. That has caused considerable amount of work and uncertainty, I think, in terms of partners, as we are able to work through the implications and the detail of that decision going forward. Particularly, however, there is an opportunity in Wales for us to further shape what policing governance looks like for us locally. So really keen to be able to seize that opportunity off the back of the decision that was made a couple of weeks ago. As I am currently the chair of policing in Wales, I'll be working very closely with my fellow PCCs and policing in Wales more broadly, alongside Welsh Government and Welsh local government, to establish design principles in terms of what that governance model will look like, and absolutely hoping that we are able to secure the benefits and the good practice facets of the model as has been delivered to date. Importantly, I want to reassure members of this panel that I am 100% and fully committed to delivering against my statutory duties and the priorities and commitments that I have made on behalf of the public in relation to my role up until the end of my tenure in 2028. And I must say that we have garnered a lot of feedback from partners who are also very keen to ensure that they are allied with us on that mission as well. In addition to the changes around police governance, we're also going to see wider police reforms, and you'll be aware that we mentioned in our last panel meeting the anticipated white paper that we are hoping government will publish imminently in the next few weeks, which will see even wider reforms to policing nationally. This is also against the significant reforms that will be introduced into the criminal justice system as a result of the independent sentencing review. And whilst these changes and reforms are welcomed in the context that we need to be able to move and evolve our public services, that is going to create some demand in the system and is really important to understand in the context of local policing. So it's against that backdrop that we'll be presenting to you the demand locally for South Wales, but wanting again you to understand the context in which we are operating at a national level. So from a local point of view, next slide please. I just wanted to provide to you a few highlights from the work that's been done, investment and work that's been delivered through my office over the past year, but particularly where that illustrates demand and need for service, again complementary to the frontline policing endeavour. So firstly, in partnership with South Wales Police, I'm pleased to say that we've been able to deliver the National Policing Guarantee, or Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee, sorry, and the Safer Streets Summer Initiative. The public made it absolutely clear when I took up office that the value of visible police presence is absolutely critical to communities, and this investment has allowed us to maintain and build neighbourhood policing numbers and increase police patrols in terms of high crime areas. The Hotspot Action Fund that's facilitated that has also enabled us to go further than simply visible policing presence, in that it's provided us with an opportunity to invest in targeted partnership activity, including critical preventative work with children and young people in areas where there is high antisocial behaviour, violence and retail crime. This investment has made some real positive impact in terms of those crime numbers in those targeted areas, but it's unclear where further funding may come from in relation to the Home Office going forward. So again, a consideration for me as I think about forward budget setting and precept setting is how we might need to build in some of that effective practice into budgets and to business as usual. I also want to draw attention to the launch of my Children and Young People's Police Crime and Justice Plan. This plan is the first of its kind in Wales, as I understand it, and is a formulation of feedback of over 5,000 voices of children and young people and those professionals engaged with them. It was quite clear through that plan and the priorities that we've set out of the importance of building further work with our schools, the adoption of a clear child-centred approach to policing, and the need for partners, or the need for us, to work with partners to offer a greater suite of interventions to young people in terms of being able to address and tackle some of the safety issues that they are facing. Next slide, please. So at the top of this slide, I think illustrates some of the investment that we're already making into that prevention and education environment in relation to responding to the needs of children and young people, with 22,000 children and young people already engaged through inputs and sessions, both within an education setting and within the community, to address issues such as child criminal exploitation, drugs and knife crime. And again, that's just a snapshot figure that illustrates to you the need and demand for service that we have in place. I also want to draw your attention to the commitment that I take extremely seriously in terms of our investment in domestic abuse services and those services addressing sexual violence, both of those supporting both victims and holding perpetrators to account. That these offences, broadly, as the Chief Constable will come on to, continue to rise and become more complex in their nature, as alongside that does the demand for services increase in tandem. And that's why it's crucial that our financial decisions ensure that we continue to fund services at a level that they need to deal with that rise in demand. Lastly, I just wanted to draw your attention to the figure there of 1,000 individuals at any one time accessing our substance misuse services. Again, substance misuse continues to be a driving factor in a range of criminal activity, and so the need for drug and alcohol services continues to be absolute paramount to that overall crime prevention and crime reduction agenda. My office is committed to recommissioning those services to better align with our local health board provision, so that we make sure that our investment is proportionate to those services going forward, and that we are evolving services to address local need. We've picked those particular items, as I've said, just so that it provides a snapshot illustration of some of the demand that clearly runs alongside the frontline policing demand that the Chief will outline shortly. Finally, just to say that in terms of forward look, that each of the commitments that you see outlined on that slide represent an opportunity for me to deliver against the priorities that the public told me mattered to them most, and to strengthen the current policing response and to support a policing service that can evolve to the changing world. Each of these is going to require investment, and to deliver them effectively and meet the expectations of the public. So when I am undertaking, as I've said, the precept setting exercise, these will also be the considerations that I need to take, not just about how we maintain South Wales Police's performance and invest in how to improve current service levels, but also what might be required for that longer term evolution of policing capabilities, so that we have a service that is fit for the future. So I'm going to pause there in terms of my introductions, and I'm going to hand over to the Chief Constable to take you through some of the real detail in terms of current service demand and performance. Chief?
Okay, thanks very much, Commissioner. Chair, members, I'm going to take you through a series of slides, which is a bit of an introduction to the organisation, the type of demands that we face, a day in the life of South Wales Police. I'll talk to you a bit about the changing crime types and the pressures, give you a sense of our performance and how we compare to other forces nationally, and then talk about our plans for the future. So I'll do my best to do that in a pacey enough way. Some of these slides, a couple of slides are quite busy and there's a lot of information on them, so we can arrange for them to be printed out for you because they're easier to have, aren't they, in your hand as handouts, than to spend hours looking at them. So this is South Wales Police, 10% of the geography of Wales. We have got 42% of the population, but 54% of the most deprived communities in Wales. We police it with about 6,500 people in total, 3,500 police officers, and this is an important statistic. I've got more or less the same number of police officers that I had in 2007. And when I show you some of the demands and the pressures and the increasing in crime types, some of it is because we actually record them and respond to them now. Then it gives you a sense of how we've managed to cope with the pressures. Capital city is a big draw on us. So whilst we've only got 10% of the geography of Wales, we've got half the population more or less, haven't we? And the capital city attracts about 600 events a year. Some of those events don't take much policing at all. Some of them are huge policing operations and some of the biggest operations in the world. And 2028, we will have the Euros land on us, and that will be one of the biggest sporting events of the world. And we don't get any extra cash for it, so we have to sort of figure out how we respond to it, and we're planning for it already significantly. We have 32%, a third more 909 calls than we did 10 years ago. But importantly, we spend twice as long on the phone on a 909 call now than we did 10 years ago. So what that tells you is there's much more complexity out there than there was 10 years ago. And we're working hard to try and drive down that call handling time because, of course, it affects our ability to get to non-emergency calls, which I know has always been an issue for the public who want to access us. And we arrest about 25,000 people a year. Next slide, please. So about 1,900 contacts a day, 600 emergency 999 calls, 800 non-emergency calls. So we get a 999 call every 2 minutes, pretty much, and we get 100 non-emergency calls an hour. Now, 57% of our calls are crime-related, but that leaves 43%, almost half, which aren't crime-related. So what we've got is we get almost 200 public safety welfare calls a day. They're made up of concerns for people who are in mental health crisis or just need help of somebody to turn up and help them. Ambulance service have got a pretty clear defined mission, and they don't tend to go to things that aren't in their mission. The fire service definitely don't. So what you're left with is the police. We do deal with 22 missing persons a day, and a lot of those missing persons are kids, and a lot of those kids are vulnerable, and you cannot afford, and they're high risk, so you cannot afford, if you get a run of missing persons that are high risk, the organisation is turning towards them, which is compromising our ability to turn up to other calls for service. We play our part with local authorities, and we've got a very, very good relationship in South Wales with all our local authorities. With 2,500 children on the Child Protection Register. We manage 2,000 registered sex offenders. So it's all that stuff nobody sees. So if somebody is convicted of a sex offence and the sex offenders register, then some of those visits are very frequent, almost daily. in certain high-risk cases. So all that goes on in the background, and we do our best to engage with and support over 6,000 repeat victims of domestic violence, which is a real challenge because we'd all want to spend much more time than we're able to with them. Next slide. So 28th of August, we pick it. It was just a particularly busy day in the year. I think that's a bank holiday weekend, isn't it? 28th of August. As we're heading into it, we are getting 1,500 calls for service. The weather's finer. We've got in that day 5 firearms deployments across the force. Some of those deployments are involve knives. Thankfully, not many of them involve guns. We're dealing with sudden deaths, rape. 3 rapes a day we get in South Wales Police, and some of those rapes involve children, which are complex, and you needed to invest a lot of resource in dealing with them. So it's just a flavour. That day was a particularly busy day, but sometimes they come hand in hand with the weather. Sometimes they take us by surprise. It's not always as easy to predict as you might think. Next slide, please. So the last 20 years. So if you look at the left hand there, you'll see that there was a lot more stealing 20 years ago than there is now as a proportion of overall crime. There is definitely less. I think I'll show you a slide in a minute around burglary. There's 40% fewer burglaries now than there was 10 years ago. So there's a lot less stealing, but the proportion of our overall crime is much more akin to violent offences, stalking and harassment offences, and domestic abuse offences. Some of that is because we didn't have categories. You know, when I joined 30 years ago, some of those crime types didn't have a category for them, didn't have a name for them. And if you didn't have a name for it, you wouldn't be dealing with it. You might go and respond to it, but you wouldn't really turn out to coercive and controlling behaviour, to honour-based violence, to, you know, some of the things we deal with now just didn't exist back in those days. So crime has changed a lot in my time, and much of it is much more complex than it ever was when I joined. Next slide, please. So over the last 10 years, so we had an uplift of police resources, as I said. It started in late 2019 into 2020, and we've got our police officer numbers back to where we were in 2007 now. But where have I put them, you want to ask yourself? Well, some of the places I put them is to deal with the 165% increases in rape reports I've had in the last 10 years. When we first, before we established the rape investigation teams, our detection rate for rape was 3%. It's now 13%, and it's one of the best in England and Wales. It's not where it might be, but it's a complex offence that often is driven by a consent issue. It's not strangers. It's not a matter of forensic analysis. It's a matter of, did the person consent or didn't they? So, but we've put resource in that place because we needed to. With serious sexual offences, with domestic violence and abuse, I've got people whose job it is to try and help, support, cajole, persuade victims of domestic abuse to engage in the criminal justice system, because that is the system I play my part in, and there's all sorts of other agencies that do their best to support the victims of domestic abuse who we know more about than we ever did. It's less behind closed doors than it ever was, but we also know it's still underreported. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And knife crime has significantly increased in that last 10 years, and all these increases have resulted in me and us putting resource into dealing with them. Not all of those resources have gone on to frontline visible response officers because, you know, we couldn't afford to not resource these crime types. Next slide, please. We've got a drugs problem nationally. We've got a particular drugs problem in South Wales. The level of drugs deaths per 1,000 population in 2 of our 7 local authorities, Swansea and Neath Talbot particularly, are amongst the worst in Europe. So we've got a particular problem with drugs death, and we do our best to respond to it. We've taken it between 2022 and 2024. We took 1.25 tons of Class A off the streets, and it feels a little bit at times like you're pushing water uphill. The only thing I would say is we do a lot of work behind the scenes in organised crime. A lot of it you won't see. A lot of it we don't talk about that publicly that often. We have amongst the lowest levels. We have the lowest level of gun crime compared to our most similar group of forces. So for those that don't know, there's 43 forces. 10 of them are grouped. There's lots of groups. We're grouped with forces that are similar to us. You know, demography, population, you know, deprivation. And we've got the lowest levels of gun crime in our most similar group of forces per thousand population by some distance. Now, I couldn't be very precise on the relationship between how good we are at tackling organised crime and that, how good we are at keeping the worst of counter-terrorist criminality away from us, even though it exists in our patch. But the only thing I would say is we don't get shooting, and long may that continue, and long may keep that and drive that away. But it's a particular problem and a particular challenge for us. Next slide, please. So I've spoken a little bit about this. We're the only capital city in the United Kingdom that doesn't get funding. You've heard me say that before. You know, if I walk away from this job after a number of years and I've not secured funding for the capital city, I will have failed. But so will all of my predecessors and all of the people in the commissioners' role. But it's not for the want of trying. And we've worked hard at that constant tapping with the government to say, you know, we're not after a lot of money on the grand scheme of things. If you gave us £8 million to help fund the capital city, you would use that money to not draw resource from Merthyr, from Ponty, from Maesteg, from the rest of the whole of South Wales to police the city. Notwithstanding that, we're regarded as one of the leading forces in the country, in England and Wales, for the way that we police large events. You know, when people come to the Taylor Swift concert, you know, I can't have a clue how popular that is. That's nothing. But the reality is, it's one of the big concerts of the globe that year, and people speak so highly of their engagement with South Wales Police and the tone, nature, and style by which we engage with the people there. So, so we're proud of our ability to respond to those events.
Can I get to that point?
Yes, please.
It's been a number of years now we've mentioned the capital city funding, which we've been denied for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But yet the city's getting busier via the Millennium Stadium, the Principality Stadium, sorry. And we'll have the Euros, as you alluded to, in 2 years' time, which is going to be massive. But there's no funding, no extra funding. I find that amazing.
Yeah, I mean, short of protesting naked with a placard on the steps of the Senate, I'm not sure what else I can do. That's not for the minutes.
Can I ask a supplementary to Rob's question? You say that it drags resources away from other areas when we have to go into the city centre. Is there, you see in London where they pull resources from other forces?
Yeah.
Does that opportunity exist for South Wales?
It does. We do, and we have. We don't do it all ourselves, but it doesn't come for free.
Right. Okay.
So you're paying a mutual aid fee, which is expensive.
Right.
So we're doing our best to pay rest days, but even then we've had to squeeze that because the overtime budget gets extremely tight, and it's not a bottomless pit. So we try and get the right balance between. And I'll tell you, I've got a 10,000 rest day debt at the moment. 10,000 days of rest days as a debt, because I'm having to re-roster people, and we can't pay them it because we can't afford to pay them it. So they, you know, and what tends to happen is people get to the end of their service and they take a bit of time off, and you sort of in the end you think, well, you can live with that because you know it's coming and it's cheaper for you, but it's not the best. An optimum model, because I'd rather not do it. Yeah. We do and have used mutual aid. We will use mutual aid for the Euros and stuff, but we've done well to protect our capabilities. So you often go to mutual aid not just for people, but for things like horses, for extra dogs, for search capability, for underwater search capability. You know, the Principality Stadium is a fabulous location, but you know, you've got to pay attention to the fact that you need to search that no one's stuck a bomb under that part, you know, because otherwise it's a global event. It's terrorist threat to it. So, fortunately, because we've protected our capability over many years, we don't always have to go far afield to ask because it's cheaper for us to keep it. Despite me pushing this fellow a lot on whether we're getting a return on investment on our underwater search, I'm convinced that we make more money on our underwater search than actually costs us to have it, because there's only about a handful of forces. There's about 4 forces now that've got the capability. Because people have got rid of it over time, you know. So we can go to mutual aid, but it's expensive.
Can I just come in just on Bob's point, just to say that we're currently waiting a response from the Policing Minister in relation to current most recent representations that we've made, with support from our Welsh MPs, MSs, as well as WLGA. All of those representations have been made in recent months, and so we're now waiting, or recent weeks, and we're now waiting for the Policing Minister to respond to us in that regard.
There's no doubt about this, that we are stuck between a rock and a hard place in this devolved, non-devolved position in as policing in Wales.
Yeah.
Because £8 million is nothing on the grand scheme of funding Wales. But there's this, we're not always sure how the money routes through from the UK government into policing, if a portion of it goes. So for a good example is, they made a load of money available for drugs prevention work in England. Some of that was sliced for policing in England, and they gave the rest to Wales. And we've on this permanent debate about where is that money that we think should come to us as that slice. I'm not saying the capital city is a precise example of that, but I think it's in the mix, because you do wonder what it would look. Well, London get a grant, don't they?
Yeah.
So I think that probably does it all.
It's unequitable, and that equity needs to be righted. So again, we just continue to make representations. There is significant support for it politically in Wales, and so we're just continuing to chip away at that position.
Have they indicated any sort of timescales on when they might make a decision, or? Okay.
So, to be honest with you, the white paper is dominating the
Yeah,
landscape.
it is.
The shape, structure of policing, the reform of policing is dominating it so much. You know, this is like, you know, just you constantly tap on this one, and like it's going to get you. In my judgment, it's going to get you nowhere in the short term. Well, we've got all the data and information in the background. If the shape of policing starts to change, so there's a bigger national centre of policing, you know, whether or not on the table becomes the number of police forces and all that. And if that starts to change, then we're well placed to slide this one in and say, you need to fund the capital city of Wales more effectively, because it's harming rural communities and valley communities in Wales. That's what it's doing. That's the argument. The argument is it's harming communities that need policing, not that capital, I think, is the stronger argument. So.
Do you think pressure of policing, with all the local authorities cut back down in the new budget, going to affect you?
Yeah.
Because you've got a community safety team here, do good jobs. They'll be going.
Yeah, exactly.
So is extra policing. So what plan have we got? Sorry, my voice is gone.
Yeah.
It's cold in here. It's gone. Right. So what plan have we got to take it forward, not to support the city, but communities?
Yeah.
Because I got a major problem, right? I'm going to go on and say, it's one of the biggest issues in Throseddu we've got, right? So how do we take that forward? How would you support the residents living up there? Because at the present moment, we have major problems.
Yeah, so, well, I spread myself as thinly as I can is the first thing I say. The second thing I'd say, the government have announced extra investment in naval policing. What we do is allocate that investment towards the places that need it the most. So using like indices of multiple deprivation and things like that. We've got 70 more officers, police officers now. So we've decided with that funding, we're going to put 70 more neighboured officers in place, not PCSOs, but police officers. That's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is whether there's grant funding available to help support some of those initiatives in areas. But it's a truism. You know, we're dealing with the consequences of disinvestment in youth services over the years, youth clubs. You know. But
what's the time limit for that then? Is the funding coming through in the next budget time? Is grant, because with the community safety going on, they reckon there's grants in the pipeline that they can use, but they won't know until like a month
but that's
before April, and then
the same position for us. There's
these
still
guys won't wait about, really. They look for other jobs.
Yeah.
So it's a knock-on effect.
Yeah, no, there still remains uncertainties over certain Home Office grants, and the Hotspot Action Fund grant that I mentioned earlier on, that 1.4 million, which would address some of the things that you're talking about in terms of that hotspot policing and supporting complementary activity to Chief Constable's team. We don't know whether that grant will come in the same shape or at the same level, if at all, and so that's one of the considerations that I will be needing to give thought to in terms of how we set that budget and any preset increase now going forward. So
Great, thank you.
Okay, next slide on. I was worried. I've been as worried about this rising tide of division, community tension, narratives which tend to split communities apart. I've been more worried about this in the last sort of couple of years than many things, if I'm honest. And I worry about is how that will all play out over the next couple of years for various reasons. So we've seen an increase in hate crime. It's not. It doesn't scratch the surface as the overall report's hate crime. If you move on, my response to that has been so I've had the local authority chief executives all together, and we've agreed that we're meeting now every 6 weeks in our quarters, and we've come up with this collaboration agreement. And what it's trying to do is to say the least we can do is know with precision what is going on in our communities, where the tensions are arising, where the narratives are getting out of hand, where there is hatred, so that we can turn to them and respond to them. Some of that is driven by misinformation and disinformation. Some people conveniently are making stuff up, put it on social media. So we've got to get sharp, and as sharp as we can be at how we respond to that disinformation. So the good thing that we've got on our side is that we are, I called them all together in May, and everybody came. Spent a couple of hours together, and they've agreed to come together every 6 weeks, and everybody shares the concern, as determined as each other to know how we work together to respond to some of the tensions that emerge. And what I've said to them is, we'll be well placed to deal with, the worst end of it for me is a riot, right? So in the end, it just gets out of hand, and people decide to, very well break the law, but they decide to expose how they feel in the sort of violent way, and riot is a good. I've had two in the last 4 years, one in Mayo in Swansea and the other in Ely, and what happens is an event happens, doesn't really matter so much in the end what it is, but you'll get people who express their views and feelings about it, and then you get a bunch of thugs who just jump on the back of it and make riot. So I think this is what that end of it I want to avoid. So what we're trying to do at the starting point, that's say, okay, we need to know at least with precision what's going on in our community. Next slide, please.
I just wanted to say something. I think you do that really well lower down the chain as well, because as a council we have, I think, 6 weekly meetings with the local inspector.
Yeah.
And we filter information, if you know your ward really well, and we filter anything that we know to them, so that works really well, not just where you are, further down from my perspective as well.
Yeah, good.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
The reason I put this in is because it was quite a big moment for us in the year, because not often you'll get somebody turning up to a police station and wanting to murder the people inside, trying to set fire to the cars outside, and then attacking them with a sort of modified axe. And I'm glad to say the person was convicted of a terrorist offence and has ended up serving a long custodial sentence. But that's a classic example of somebody who was disillusioned, who was acting upon them, not organised with anybody else's, but they call them sort of lone actors, and turns up to a police station determined to kill people. And of course, I need to turn those people out again, don't I? Because I can't afford. We look after them. We work hard to look after them. I'll show you some data now, which makes me believe that we do it as well as anybody else in terms of looking after our people. But we also need to dust them down and send them back out there. because it's an emergency service and we've got to be able to respond to people in need. Okay, so so when I spoke to you last in 2024, I said to you these are things we were focusing on in the year. Being trusted, understanding what productivity looks like, what we're getting out of our investment in resource, what you're getting in your investment in resources, members of the public councillors and members of the Peace and Crime Panel. How we use data, because if we're ever going to make the most out of artificial intelligence opportunities, and there are some great opportunities out there in policing, we've got to get our data into better shape, and it's getting there now, but that's something we is long overdue. And supporting the workforce, of course. So next slide, please. So how are we doing? Right, so when it comes to residential burglary, so someone breaking into your home, we're delivering the best performance, that is in terms of reductions and charges in our most similar group, and the second best in the 43 forces in England and Wales. For serious sexual offences in rape, we're the best in the most similar group and 4th out of 43. We don't have much robbery, which is partly because we're very good at responding to it and finding the body and sending them to prison. You walk on our streets, you are less likely to be the victim of robbery than pretty much than any other force in the most similar group, amongst the lowest in England and Wales. And as a study about 4 or 5 years ago, our performance on violence with injury wasn't as good as it could have been, and we've turned that around and are now in the sort of top quartile nationally in that regard. Next slide, please. Already spoken to you about gun crime, knife crime is the on terms of decreases now. We've got the lowest levels. This is a decrease. So not only have we got the lowest levels, we've got the second best decrease in our most similar group of forces. So it's getting lower still. Knife crime, we know we've got decreasing levels of knife crime, despite the narrative, and we have had over a number of years. Partly we know is because we're better than most at using NHS data and not just relying on police data. So how many people turn up to NHS with knife injuries, criminal knife injuries? We've got that data to tell us how we're responding to it, so that's reducing. Next slide, please. Workforce assessment. So the first one there is the national equality standard. So when George Floyd was murdered by a police officer over in the States back in late 2020, early 2021, there was a rising consciousness around the race equality, and the whole world was talking about it, and there were protests across the nation, including in South Wales. And then you've seen some awful events, terrible, abhorrent events nationally in terms of police officers misconducting themselves, sexually misconducting themselves, murdering people. And so in all that stuff, important stuff, you can imagine there's a series of plans that come out nationally. So we'll have a race action plan, we'll have a sexual misconduct, we'll have lots of things. And in order to avoid, and of course we follow them, in fact we wrote the sexual misconduct plan. In order to understand how the organisation is performing over time, we decided that we were going to invest in the national equality standard as an independent measure of how this outfit is doing when it comes to equalities. Not as a sort of, we'll follow that plan until no one's talking about it anymore, which is what happens. So we're committed to national equality standard. We're only one of 2 forces in the UK to have achieved the standard. And the commitment is they come back and they examine us every 12 to 18 months to see where we are. And I've made a long-term commitment that equality, diversity and inclusion is on the agenda at every gold meeting I chair, is asked in every interview that I hold, promotion process and stuff at all levels. And so we've taken a long look at this and have worked hard to create an environment, but also to become more representative, to attack, I spoke publicly about institutional racism in 2023 and a number of things. So that's the national equality standard. That sexual misconduct survey is an internal survey, 15,000 respondents across England and Wales. And they're asking things like how seriously the organisation take it. If I was sexually harassed at work, what would they do? and our people using their positions. And of the 11 opening statements, which were meant to be indicators of the organisation's performance, South Wales Police was first in 7 and second in the other 4. How that might play out also is that when it comes to the workforce, if you're a woman working for South Wales Police, you're less likely to leave us than any other force in England and Wales. So we've got the best retention rate. If you're a constable working for us, you're less likely to leave us than anyone else in England and Wales. So whilst I'm very prepared to send people out and tackle difficult things, we're also, when we need to, trying to look after them. And the honest answer is not everybody who's... I've dismissed more people, twice as many people per 1,000 population than any of my other colleagues in Wales. And I've had increasingly honest conversations about the people who joined us in the last 5 years about whether policing is right for them. Because we've recruited quickly, and you know, there's probably 15 to 1,800 new people with us in the last 5 years. It's a big chunk of your organisation. Not everybody will be fit for policing, so we've been trying to have more honest conversations about this is and then, you know, we're very confident that we've got more upstanders work, because you know, much of our exposition of conduct, we volunteered to be part of the Angelini inquiry, for example, is because we've got our own workforce standing up and leading here. So yeah, some other non-crime indicators of performance. So neighbour policing, I spoke before about the strategy every year is to be protected. The financial pressures have driven many forces to decimate neighbour policing in favour of putting it into other crime types. And we've two things we've done. We've tried to protect it, firstly by coming to the Commissioner and asking for more money to protect it, and the Commissioner then presenting a precept discussion to yourselves, a proposal. And the second thing that we've tried to do is make the process, the professionalisation of neighbour policing, as good as it can be. And we're not there yet. We're a good outfit, but we're not outstanding. And we're going to, by the end of September, 70 more officers will have arrived in and deployable in South Wales into neighbour policing. Okay, next slide, please. Just gives you a bit of a flavour of the inspections that we get. So there's not a month that goes by that the inspector isn't in the force somewhere. You're tripping over them at times. The last and most recent one that's been published is our child protection inspection. And bearing in mind we've got 54% of the most deprived wards in Wales, bearing in mind that we've got so much challenge with our partners to manage all these kids who need help. The inspector that came in and took apart our response to child protection. Next slide, please. So the context here is, I think it's 8 forces, if not 7 forces that have been inspected so far. Ours is the best inspection. 2 of the forces have got inadequate scores, which is a bad day, isn't it? If you're a force and someone says you're inadequate, it is a bad day. So, and I'm particularly proud of this one because we've worked hard to respond to all that vulnerability, and as ever, there's more to do. Once the Commissioner had published her police and crime plan, it was my job to publish our new delivery plan. This is my second delivery plan as chief. This one is much more pointed and specific about what we've got to do. We had to go at rewriting our mission and vision values. And our vision is to be outstanding. We're a good force compared to national indicators, but we're not yet outstanding. So, and I want us to be outstanding. To be outstanding, we need to be accessible, we need to be reliable, and we need to be trusted by our community. And I am going through a series of staff roadshows at the moment. I did one yesterday. fifth year on the trot to go through how we are delivering it, what we're putting in place to deliver it. The people who work for South Wales Police are, brilliant people. They're committed, really super committed. We just need to crack that nut into outstanding, and that's the sort of determination into the future. Next slide, please. So notwithstanding the pressures elsewhere, I took the decision 2 weeks ago that we needed to put 300,000 hours back into response policing. So we're going to do that in a couple of ways. We're going to have another exercise of leaning out. So what happened in the growth period? So we had funding for another 500 cops. In fact, we had funding for 452, but because we were so good at recruiting, the government was so desperate to meet their 20,000 police officer target, they were going to FOS saying, can you recruit any more? So we said, we bit their blooming hand off at the elbow. So we recruited over 500 new additional posts, police officers. But what we didn't have is any money, a commensurate amount of money for police staff posts. So what happens over time is you find police officers in non-police officer jobs there, frankly. So you find them in back office jobs because you need someone to do that job. So I don't need police officer powers to do lots of the jobs that we need doing. So I think what we've come to the conclusion is that actually we've got to strip back the back office again of police officers to put back into the front line. We've got to improve efficiencies. What that means is we've prided ourselves on being a technologically advanced force, facial recognition and things that we do. But there's more opportunity out there than we are seizing on at the moment. So things like, I don't know if you've heard of rapid video response. So we're doing it for a certain category of domestic abuse cases, and all the evidence is people are more satisfied. They don't really want the cop to turn up to the house. We can gather evidence quickly. In the moment they made a decision to contact us, we can capture it without turning the blue lights and sirens out, and obviously not when there's a threat to life. But so we're extending that rapid video response now into other areas of crime. So which we can do more quickly, can't we? Because what it means is if someone calls up, we've engaged them, we sent them a link to engage in a video call, and then we're gathering and capturing evidence there. So we think there's some space to do more of that and improve, and to release efficiencies. And then abstractions. My sickness rate isn't where it should be, so that's one.
Chair, can I apologise for interrupting a sec? On that last point you made about video evidence, is there any danger with AI at the moment of people producing videos that are not real?
Oh yeah, there's a real danger.
Will that lead to more police investigations and give you Armstrong?
We're not. So we do have some capability to detect deepfakes, but we haven't got forensic capability to do it. So we've got some discrete capability that we can use to detect it. At the moment, the Department for Science and Technology laboratory is looking at trying to provide an evidential stamp that will say that's not real. That would meet a court standard. And there is very good work in that space that they're working through at the moment, and it's too complicated for me to explain because they don't understand it. But there is a risk. We are very alive to it. But the world, the gap between our ability to understand and utilize AI technology. So the only way you're going to fight AI technology is to use AI technology, is to understand how AI works, understand its signatures and how it's mechanically put together, and then have the ability to understand and counteract it. And so we are alive to it and we're working on it.
So ask AI, is this AI?
Well, there ought to be methods to use AI against AI. But as you can imagine, that gets pretty complicated. We're hoping the government will announce some investment in that. I lead on science innovation for UK police, so we know it's real. We're not seeing it as a volume problem for us.
Okay, thank you.
So we're trying to put 300,000 hours back in, and I've said I need to see a plan by January about how we're going to deliver it. And that's me, isn't it? We're on to money.
Yeah, I'm going to take the first slide. If you could move on, please. So it might not look like it, but the first slide is a result of probably 5 or 6 conversations between Omar and myself, or probably over the last month. And we've come to a consensus of where we think the organisation's costs are going over the medium term. And we've done that using some inflation assumptions, and then applied them cumulatively to the base budget year, which is the current year. So the inflation assumptions are across the top there in the grey box, and then the first line of expenditure then has been derived by applying the inflation assumptions to some subheadings, and within that expenditure row to project our costs forward then into 26, 7, 8 and 8, 9. So you can see in the expenditures rise into 469 million in 26, 27, and up to 490 and then up to 508. So, you know, as the Chief just described, you know, policing is hugely complex in South Wales, and comes at a significant cost as well to go with that, as you would expect. The next line then details the Home Office grant settlement. Now those are indicative figures based on a lot of work that Omar's done with colleagues nationally around the CSR that was announced in the summer. So we've got 3 years of indicative funding here, which we'll know a little bit more detail around 26/7 on the, I was told yesterday this settlement's going to be on the 17th of December, so we'll know precisely how much money we're going to get in a couple of weeks' time. And then what has been modelled underneath that then in that last row that says police precept is a 5% increase in precept, coupled with a 0.5% increase in the tax base. And remember, the tax base is the number of properties that we can apply that tax to. So that results in some shortfalls against the budget. So 3.5 million in 26/27, 5.7 then in 27/28, and then 7.8 in 28/29. CSR, the funding was going down in real terms every year from 6/7. So it was about a 5% increase in 26/27, 3 in 27/28, and then only 1.5 in 28/29. So the funding is going down in real terms every year. So again, a difficult position for policing to be in. At the moment, a 1% increase in precept generates around about £1.9 million. So you can see where you might need to go, you know, to balance the budget. But there's a lot of variables in there at the moment. You know, we don't know how much funding we're going to get precisely. The tax base might change. Those estimates of expenditure are what we call top down, so they're based on, you know, a top line, and then you just extrapolate across. But the finance department are building up the budget from a zero base as we speak. And again, I think we're expecting those figures. I might probably run about the same time as the settlement in the last week of December, middle of December, or before Christmas. Happy to move on to the next slide, which I think is yours.
I think I was just going to add a little bit, if I may. So in September, we gave you the landscape picture of police finances, and you know exactly where that £2 billion that's been allocated for the next 3 years is going. It's all gone on inflation. And some of the constraints we've got is maintaining certain expenditure. So police officer numbers, we've got to maintain them or you lose funding. Neighbourhood policing officers, you maintain them or you lose funding. PCSOs, you maintain them or you lose funding. By the time you look at how much of your budget is all kind of locked away, all the funding gets eaten up by inflation. So we're going to come back to you in January with far more detail in terms of what's behind the 400 million there, what's behind the Home Office grant, and what is our actual true share, because they are still working in the backgrounds of how they can deliver the mission statements that they've got around knife crime, around neighbourhood policing. But that is probably the best level of grant funding we anticipate at this level. So it can only go down. It's unlikely to go up. Therefore, the gap is going to only go up. It won't come down. So the two things that affect expenditure, one is inflation, and the other is, I'm using the wrong computer, that's good. The other is new burdens. And I think in September, I gave you a full breakdown of all the new burdens affecting policing. Some of those are listed on there. So things like tasers and vetting and firearms licensing, and all the redaction tools and digital forensics. So our share of those is that 13 and 18 million, so nearly 30 odd million pounds. And then 9 million pounds is not currently costed yet because we're still working through the detail. We're completing a national survey. So our current analog radios that police officers use to communicate in vehicles and on the streets are being replaced by a digital network. It's been in the planning for over a decade. It's finally coming in. And our current estimate is by 2029 to shift from analog to digital, our costs as a single force are going to be around 9 million pounds. And there's no option because one will be switched off and the other one will be switched on, and that's it. So you can't say, well, we'll stick with the old one. It is a transition and it's 400 million pound nationally. So we're just working through the detail on that. But as I said, we'll come back in January. We'll give you far more detail in terms of what's happened to the landscape picture, how it translates to the local position, and then what that could potentially mean on police precept. Policing at the moment costs just over £1 a day. So South Wales Police, on average, is about £1 a day on the local taxpayer for the bandee. 2/3 of the people that live in South Wales Police pay less than a bandee. So I reckon majority pay less than £1 a day at the moment. So the precept will have a marginal impact, if you like, to sustain all the performance we talked about today and to maintain all the red circled elements that we've got with policing.
Can I just ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So on the investment in equipment,
yeah,
like protection tools, is that something, because obviously that equipment has a life,
yeah,
that might be 2 years, 3 years, a year or whatever. Is that 13 million because we're having to change out some of that equipment, or is it, and will we need to do that every year or not for 3 years because we're buying new?
Yeah.
How does that
So we have short life assets. These are short life assets that have 3 to 4 year life. Some forces will just put the whole money into a particular year. So I'm going to replace 3,000 laptops. I'm going to put all the money. What we try to do is smooth that expenditure out.
Right.
So by the time it comes to replacement, we're not looking for a peak amount of funding. We're kind of put an average sum in each year, and therefore the precept is fairly level throughout that process. But we have got a full asset replacement cycle for mobile phones, for handsets.
So you push it out year on year rather than look to find a capital expense.
And we don't get any capital at all from government, so there's no capital budget. So the reason that we smooth it out is basically trying to smooth out the effect on the local taxpayer. 1,000 vehicles need replacing, don't they?
Yeah.
And the move to electric inevitably means that we got to transition our infrastructure slowly rather than a big bang approach. So we definitely have done, we're into long-term planning and making sure we anticipate what's coming down the line, which is why our medium-term financial plans, if you look backwards, they've been fairly consistent year on year in terms of the ask and then the spend. And I think in Dave's report, you'll see that the Audit Wales have again complimented on the precision of our activity.
I would say on our capital, we unless it's directly operational, so you've got no choice but to replace a taser because it gets to an end of life. You can't use a bit of kit that is end of life because of all that goes with the compromise. So unless it's operational, we're not trying to buy Gucci kit and lead on the market. So for example, we're very happy. I'd like to have much stronger green credentials with our fleet, but we can't afford it, and we're not going to go there until we really have to. We've got a load of estate that is tired and it needs replacing, and that's a huge challenge for us financially. So
what you mentioned previously in the last meeting regarding tasers was shocking.
Yes.
That's
Well,
a
feeling,
hugely
yeah.
concerning,
Yeah.
isn't it, from
Yeah.
just a global way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
And the old one will just not work and they won't warranty it and that's it. So you either go back with a truncheon, that's the only other defence. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll come back in January. We'll give you far more precision and
Thanks. Just a quick timetable around process. So the preset consultation is out at the moment. That closes mid-January. Home Office grant settlement, 17th of December, first cut of the budget, the days before Christmas. Early January, I usually spend a week going through the budget and asking some questions of Omar and the team, just to make sure that I'm happy to recommend that to Emma. And then we've also got a panel subcommittee, it's on the 16th now. And then obviously we meet again here on the 3rd. Next slide.
that's it.
Thank you.
Just very briefly to conclude, because I'm sorry.
We're in the chief.
Apologies.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, do you get one-off grants as well? So local government, they'll get their amount they're going to get from Welsh Government and then they'll have one-off grants as well. Do you get that within the financial year as well?
Yes, so the national pot, if you like, is about £914 million. The Home Office overall settlement's been very tight. So they're looking carefully as to how much of that they can respect going forwards. But there are one-off grants decided annually.
Within a financial year.
Yeah, but you guys,
Yeah.
and they spread that quite thin
Yeah.
across different forces.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all well you're doing. But does that have an impact on when we're looking for funding? You say, oh, well, South Wales are doing great, they don't need as much as somebody who's not doing as great. So are you a victim of the success in terms of?
No, not on national funding, no, because the funding formula has been fixed for 20 years. It's way overdue. We think we'd come out better if they reviewed the national funding. But, yeah, well, no, based on demand.
Right.
Based on deprivation indicators, population and demand.
Yeah.
But it's been in place for 25 years,
Yeah.
and every government has said they're going to look at it, and everyone realises that it's too hard. And the problem is, it's like if you review a funding formula, you have to review it on the basis that nobody loses and only others gain. Because if you right, there's the pot you're going to spread out. Some forces will fight tooth and nail. It's kind of a political nightmare, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To say you're going to take money away.
And they're too afraid of what the
But I go
results will bring.
back to, they're not going to go anywhere near the funding formula now because the white paper is going to change the shape of policing. So,
Okay.
where, you know, if it drastically changes the shape of policing, then the funding formula gets reset, doesn't it? It's up in the air then. Yeah.
So just to wrap up, because I'm conscious of time and I know the Chief and his team need to leave in terms of questions, but I just wanted to summarise to say that I hope you've heard that compared to other forces nationally, the South Wales Police is performing strongly in a number of areas, but the criticality to that is that performance needs to be maintained and improved. As you said, the Chief's ambition is to be outstanding in terms of service, and there is clearly areas that improvement needs to be made. The point is that policing is clearly operating in significant challenging landscape at the moment, and although overall crime is down, the nature and the complexity of those crime areas that are rising just continues to place additional demand on policing, making resourcing decisions challenging in terms of how the force manages their resources. Technology is critical, so not just about being able to renew and replace assets and kit that, as you said, have a life cycle and are absolutely critical and are, there is no debate or question about whether that needs to be done, but also, as the Chief has highlighted, the need to continuously think about investment in new technology. And that investment will be an investment before savings are made. So there is a lag in time when thinking about how we can accommodate that from a budget point of view. And then, of course, the national context, as we've just talked about, the uncertainty in terms of funding and some of the critical government missions around halving knife crime, halving violence against women and girls, the significant reform programme that will be underway right across the system that invariably is going to have impact and demand. So I just wanted to be clear that you have a really good understanding of the considerations I'll be taking account of when thinking about that budget setting and precept, and that you are coming on the journey with us in terms of arriving at that decision in February for the constituents of South Wales. So if you've got any questions, I'm sure the Chief and the team would be happy to field. Sorry.
I've been asked to ask you a question, Jeremy, by a head teacher in Rhagfyr. He said, would you consider sending, like you used to, sending police officers into schools to talk to the children about social media and internet usage and grooming? Because he said all his kids in Heron's Bridge, they all, he said if a teacher tells them something, they don't remember it, but they can all go, the policeman said. He said the police have a lot more success in getting things up to the children than we do.
What was the name of the school?
Heron's Bridge is a special school.
I'll take a look at it. Two things I would observe is that the Welsh Government took money out of the school's policing programme without telling us.
He said he did acknowledge that.
And but we've retained, because I all those pressures, we've retained the school's police officers, and we've not called them that because we had to call them something different because otherwise government would just take money all the time. So we called them youth engagement officers. And so we've got youth engagement officers available, so I'll take a look, particularly that school.
You just said the kids remember it.
Yeah.
They say we remember when the police came in, and they take more notice of the police than
But the real temptation there was to say, you took the money away, we will repurpose the staff into some of those pressures, but we didn't, because we would have thought, because we would do precisely what we shouldn't do as a nation, that is disinvest in children. Because the moment you disinvest in children, you're dealing with the problems associated with generations, aren't you? Yeah. So, yeah. Agree with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on that the superintendent goes round council chambers or talk to the council members. Do you have any superintendents going around to scrutiny panels? Because we want to look into it, because we've got a couple of scrutiny panels all ours, right? All ask questions.
Yeah.
That's the only way we're going to get the information out.
Yeah.
And I think there's a mishap there somewhere, because we don't know what's happening sometimes.
Okay.
Can you have a look at it?
Yeah, we'll take it away, yeah, well, give it some thought.
I think it's fair to say we've developed a strategy in Monmouth and Tap where we're working together to be stronger, not to be the police officer, not to be the commissioner, but to support them where we can. We're to scrutinise, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But I think there comes time when we have to be complimentary of what's happening and supportive. That's great relevance there, in my opinion. And we started that process in RCT, and it's gone down really well. We're working with the community inspector and both, and the commissioner as well. So it has power. Those meetings have great relevance. So perhaps it might be the way forward for other councils. I don't know. I can only relate to how we're doing it, how we plan to go about it in RCT to support each other now is critical.
Yeah. There are a number of ways that we can engage with local members so that you are up to speed in terms of what's happening, and we do it right across the force area, as Bob has said, either my office attending full council meetings, having discrete meetings about particular thematic issues that might be impacting locally, or even doing local walkabouts as we've already done up on the Gurnall, so that we understand some of the issues that I can take back to the chief and his team, and or update you on some of the plans that are afoot to address those issues. So again, happy and open to any invitations in terms of making sure local
I think that's really
members are aware.
important. I represent a leafy board of land, but we've had a murder 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Nice we've had an incident just recently around the fields on the edge of the ward. We've got a massive spate of commercial crime in land, and I think in Canton too. So I think that visibility on the outstreet. So I really welcome, I've not met my inspector since 2017. I'd really welcome a walkabout in Lambeth where the retailers are feeling really under pressure, everything is gossiped in those retailers, so that spreads to the community as well. And when they're feeling under pressure, the community's feeling under pressure, and I think it's really important to have that uniform on the street. And in fairness to our PCSOs, in the last couple of weeks, they've done a fantastic job dropping leaflets in shops, going in at my request to speak to some of the retailers, and that's worked really well. But I think if they see the badges and the stripes, that will help a bit more.
Yeah.
Can I say, accept the words they're saying, I really don't. But I think, my own view, to meet the scrutiny is far better than meeting full council. Because there's too many in full council. Sometimes you go 70 and down to 40, right? And there's a lot of people, and they all want to get a word in. And scrutinise is one from each ward, so you can take it forward, and it's easier to control. Because you yourself full council, you've got a major problem, you've got pear-shaped in it. Everybody's on top of each other, it don't work.
And again, be led by you and the different arrangements in different areas in terms of what's most effective.
So I've got a few more questions, sorry Emma. Sarah, and then we'll go to Caroline.
I'm struck by our, and I'm not quite sure I'm going with this, you might have to bear with me, but we compare with other comparative forces. We come out quite well, but I'm also struck with the figure that you mentioned about 13% of rape cases successful. The impact that must have on trust and confidence, because that must mean there's a big percentage that are not successful outcomes. Do we think about having targets within those areas? Because even though we may come out as the best police authority, I still think that's a shockingly low figure to end up with. So within certain areas of crime, do we aspirational targets that we want to meet as well? Do we have other ways of aspiring to better performances in terms of outcomes? What would be good for that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I'm not sure.
That's good, because I'm not sure I understood it.
No, what does good look like is a great question. Because when it comes to reports of rape, for example, what does good look like is a very complex answer.
What does outstanding look like?
Well,
where we want to get
it's the best in the country at the moment.
Yeah.
So I guessed against the peers. But the one thing I would say is, not every victim of rape who reports to the police wants a criminal justice outcome.
No.
So that is a criminal justice outcome.
Helpful, yeah.
That is not necessarily the outcome that they want. So previously, when we've done surveys of victims of domestic abuse, whilst the outcome rate might be 30% or 25%, their satisfaction rates can be upwards of 80%.
Yes.
So the experience that they've got to the police, how they safeguard them, how they care for them, how they help them out of the situation they might be in, maybe much more important than the criminal justice outcome. So it becomes very complicated. You will have heard the debate about jury trials at the moment, abandoning jury trials. So it's a political debate, it's a political decision. So I'm not here to mark it or weight it or give it any sort of credence. But I was struck by the statement that consent is a very complex issue when it comes to serious sexual offences and rape. It doesn't seem complex, does it? When you say, well, what do you mean it's complex? It can't be complex. But if you think about a rape being an offence where you have to prove beyond doubt that the person didn't consent, and you've got to prove beyond doubt that the perpetrator knew that the victim didn't consent. Now, there are some people out there who think that is a bar which is too high. The question of whether a judge and not a jury would be better placed to apply the law is a question which they're debating at the moment, aren't they? But so for all those reasons, I think it would be false to stick a target on a detection rate for the police. The one thing I would see, though, there is definitely a target, if you like, on attrition at court, because I think we should be charging offences where, on balance of probabilities, the person is guilty of the offence. That's where we should be charging. CPS should be prosecuting cases at court, which may lose.
Yeah.
But that's right.
Yeah.
Because we should always be saying, on balance, has this happened? And we should push the CPS hard on taking that to court. The reality is we lose a lot of victims because of the delays in the court processes. So it's so complex that it would be wrong for me to stick, because what my staff will do if I stick a tag on them and I put enough pressure on them is in the end they'll find a way of cheating. Because that's what happens in targets in the public sector. So I'm sort of, but it's a hard public debate to have this one because it's really hard to explain the complexities of. So bearing in mind now, if somebody reports a rape to us on a Sunday morning after Saturday night, forgive me for simplifying it, but stay with me on it. They can report it to us, make a phone call to us, and never, ever, ever speak to us again because they decided they don't want to. That is a recorded crime. Always stays a recorded crime. So there's a reasonably high percentage of people who call us, tell us about it, and then disengage entirely with it for whatever reason. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying. So it's, it's difficult.
I think that's really helpful because it starts to outline the complexities of what we're looking at, and simply just saying we're blessed it's not good that we're looking at what might be behind that, and that's kind of reassuring from my perspective. I mean, I don't think targets are that helpful, but I'm struck by 13% as being incredibly.
Yeah, it is. It is. So it's an impossible. So when so there was a thing called Operation Soteria, which is the national response to rape, and we were one of the pilot forces. And the Susie Lampley Foundation did some studies, and they found that the satisfaction of victims of rape was much higher with the policing services once we'd invested in it and professionalised it and stuff than the actual criminal justice outcome. So what does good look like is a great question and hard to answer.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. A totally different question now, wasn't it? Do you know you mentioned the amount of officers that you've got working in what do you call the back office and not doing the job maybe that they were trained to do? Do you have a timeline or anything in place to, because I'm statistically, terms and conditions would be different for the jobs they're doing maybe, and is that you could save a lot of money, I'm assuming, by having advertising.
So I'm a cop and I've been in the job for 20 years.
Yes.
I'm 30, but let's say I'm a youngster.
Yes.
And I've been in the job for 20 years.
Yeah.
For that 20 years, I've been responding to crime and victims of crime.
Yeah.
My back goes.
Yeah.
I need surgery and I can't tackle people on the street. I'm like, what do I do with them? Do I resign them from the service or do I find a job for them? At the moment, I can't resign them from the service.
Okay.
I can't just say, sorry, thanks for your help, bye-bye.
No, I totally understand.
So I think there's a big proportion of people who are restricted, but of course things like rapid video response would be a great place to have them because they're not they can't get into conflict on a physical conflict. There is an honesty with some people about exiting them, which we do have, although it's complicated. The other thing is we are in 2011, Sir Tom Windsor did a review of the remuneration terms and conditions of policing because it's largely a terms and conditions issue. And one of the things that he proposed then was the introduction of an X factor. So that was a +8, well, it was a -8% in your salary if you weren't doing the full job. It wasn't implemented.
Oh, right, okay.
So it wasn't implemented, right. And they're rekindling it, and we volunteered to be a pilot force.
Right, okay, yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, interesting. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I think that person maybe should have that job because they've got the experience, haven't they? It's just cost.
It is 100%. It is. Yes. It's a good question.
Yeah. I think your last one from Sandra.
I was just going to say how well sort of Vale Morgan and South Wales Police, Vale Morgan Council have worked together, sort of over the difficulties that we've had over the summer, the sort of police support that's been there at the Holiday Inn Express and outside the Vale Council offices as well, where we've had protests and sort of hate crime really, and outside actors coming in and stirring
wanting to stir untouchable
but also, the CCTV operators that we have with Cardiff and Vale councils and South Wales Police, particularly, picking up somebody who had a knife on Holton Road, and then I think there was the one where they set the building alight on Holton Road, and the CCTV working with the police to get things sorted properly. So I think the working relationship, obviously I'm at a lower level, but the leader and chief exec I know have a good working relationship with South Wales Police as well. helpful.
Thank you.
No more questions? No? So just to sum up there, thank you very much for all your hard work and the presentation and all the, you know, all the hard work that you've done over the years and the successes that you're achieving. But I think we'd like to acknowledge all the difficulties that you're also facing, especially financially as well. So if we can help anyway in terms of the capital city funding, if we can assist, please let us know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Except we don't understand making. Yeah, we rule that one out.
I've used that. I feel like saying if I could do more, I would, you know, give it.
Don't work.
Thank you, mate. It's not a British site,
Thank you.
Maybe perhaps a motion amongst all the councillors on the same council day to the right to the Welsh office, not Welsh office, but the Welsh Government and the Secretary of State for Wales. We all do a motion on the same day.
That might be strong.
Look about.
Thank
you. Okay, all the best.
Thanks.
Oh, right, okay.
So should I pass it
Yeah.
on?
Yeah, pass on intelligence. Yeah.
He does me as well.
So that would be helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
God bless you.
do you want to come down?
Upgrade you from the cheap seats.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was mindful that they were all ready to go, but on the graphic, there was, it said 3% reduction in knife crime.
Yes.
But in the report on page 33, I think it was, it says 5%. So there was a difference in maybe it's right. So page 33 of the report said it was 5%.
So is that 5% is violence with injury broadly?
I think it was
3%
reduction in
like-
knife crime, is it?
Page.
Yeah, that's from the VIU that was,
Yeah, so the violence with injury is 3%.
So it's talking about two
knife
different
crime is
things.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Cheers, thanks.
and some
Yeah,
of that,
violence with injury broadly, knife crime would be part of.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that 40% reduction in burglary. And you just wonder whether that is because we're getting better at detecting it, or the rewards from burglary isn't as good as what it used to be. Or is it more difficult to offload the kit that they're stealing from
Combination of
properties?
It's a combination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or is it just easier to go down the co-op and nick 100 quid's worth of coin?
Okay. David, I think
Right, okay,
we're
thank
on
you.
your agenda item, financial update.
Okay, so what I've done here is I've tried to go through the cycle of financial events in a year. So, look, projection of the accounts, which is looking back on the prior financial year. Then an in-year review of the current year, both revenue and capital. I won't go through the CSR, just because we've kind of just done that.
Yeah.
And then just touch base on the governance arrangements as well. So, yeah, so the audit of the accounts. Now the accounts are a really important public-facing document because it tells a large group of stakeholders how the force and the commissioner have spent their budget during the year. And what comes of that kind of overall assessment, which is done by Audit Wales, as to whether or not the accounts are actually accurate, is a host of governance arrangements as well. So you've got external audit, internal audit, annual governance statements, HMICFRS. So there's a lot goes on to make sure that financial information is true and fair. It's a long process, so the end of the financial year, 31st of March, but those audited accounts are actually published until the end of October, and that's the statutory deadline which we met this year. You can see all the steps in between there. So the draft accounts were produced at the end of June. Audit Wales then came in on the 1st of August and didn't finish their work until the 23rd of October. The accounts were then signed off by myself, Omar, Jeremy and the Auditor General and published online on the 30th of October. But the important message is that they did There's an unqualified opinion, which is good. That's exactly what you want, is an unqualified opinion. And there's a true and fair position of the policing's finances. And I use the term policing because they group accounts. So you've got the position of the chief constable, which is the majority of the budget, but the commissioner is included in that as well. So a couple of financial sort of highlights here, I suppose, just so you can appreciate the scope of it, which you kind of tend to focus on one side of it really, the revenue budget, which we just looked at being projected forward. But for 24-25, the net spend was the net budget was 386 million. We spent 385.9. Then you got capital as well, which program for the year was a spend of nearly 41 million. There was some slippage into the current year, which inevitably happens with such a large program. Even you got a supplier delayed delivering cars, a couple of rainy weeks, and progress on the JFU isn't quite what it should be. So it doesn't take a huge amount to get some slippage in the program either. Another thing we document in quite a lot of detail at year end is reserves. It looks significant. 11.4 is what is a contingency fund, and that is actually below what the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy tell us we should be keeping. We've got a plan to bolster it. That's going to take a couple of years. Then we've got earmark reserves, both revenue and capital. Now, there's firm plans to spend those, so they won't be moved around from one area to another. There's firm plans to spend our money. I just think off the top of my head, and I think there's, like in the capital ones, I think there's 4 million in there for like tasers and so on. So there's firm plans to spend our money. So it's not like we can go, well, we're going to feed that into the revenue account over the next couple of years to not balance the books, because that means then you just open up a hole somewhere else. Yeah. So there's firm plans to spend all of that. Some other bits which we don't generally see as part of budget setting. So as part of the accounts, we produce a balance sheet which basically lists all our assets and liabilities. So the fixed assets, so the land, buildings, IT equipment, vehicles, 2.5 billion. So you can imagine that takes a lot of looking after, which is why the revenue budget is so large as well. Because so those, the buildings got to be heated, the cars got to be fueled, and so on. So it's a big operation. Long-term borrowing. So we've got a loan portfolio of about 32 million at the moment. Some of that, like £1 million matures in the next 6 months, but most of it is longer-term debt of around about between 20 and 40 years. And we got significant borrowing planned again because of things like the JFU, and there's other things coming over the horizon which would, in theory, increase the borrowing, like whatever's going to happen to Cardiff Central. I think there's plans for custody unit at some point. So all of those things will need funds. There's going to be yeah, Swansea. Yeah. So that borrowing looks like it's going to go up significantly over the next financial horizon of 3-4 years. I talked about the governance arrangements around producing that. So internal audit, there's an audit committee which also scrutinises things like our risk management arrangements. So that's it on the accounts. As I said, it was exactly what we wanted, an unqualified audit opinion, which shows we've got sound financial management arrangements in place. Is there any questions on the accounts before I move on to the next section?
Sure.
Yeah, just quickly, the 2.5 billion assets.
Yeah.
I think Gareth asked this maybe a few meetings ago, but is there any opportunities to dispose of some of that land asset to get the reserves up?
Well,
I know we're redeveloping water and places like that,
Yeah.
but is there any other lands that have been identified that belong to the police that could be sort of liquidised?
the estate's strategy outlines the future direction of travel for the estate, and there are where it's been deemed appropriate, there are plans to dispose of some properties, and of course that generates savings in the year as well on things like utilities and so on. So there is a plan which the Commissioner is considering at the moment, but hasn't approved yet.
Yes.
Right,
So
okay.
I've had
Sorry
presented
to
to me.
jump.
No, it was a good question. I've had presented to me a refreshed estate strategy of which there is a disposal strategy and plan. There has been a long-term plan around disposals, so South Wales Police had quite a significant estate. So the force has made real inroads in terms of those disposals. I'm just reviewing the detail of that, and again in January when you have your finance subcommittee the opportunity to consider what the estate looks like in the context of the capital programme, and I think it'd be a good point to raise.
Because we are thinking of obviously the plans for Cardiff Central, and sometimes from personal experience in developing, sometimes a refurbishment can be more expensive than a new build on a plot of land. The location is phenomenal, obviously, but sometimes demolition is sometimes more expensive. So a new site, new spot, and everything is probably less expensive.
You're absolutely spot on, and the big schemes that we've talked about here, such as Cardiff Central, Waterton, the Swansea Ridewell, I'm considering the phased business cases of those in terms of approaches now, again, as a part of the estate strategy. So hoping in the new year be able to come back to you with a bit more definitive update in terms of direction of travel on those as they pertain as well to the budget, because they'll be relevant to that.
And then if we were to get some of that cash liquidised or assets liquidised, would that go to reserves or would that go into capital spending?
It would probably be set aside for the capital programme.
Right.
Asset proceeds, the technical term is capital receipts,
Right.
and you can only use that for certain things.
Certain things, right.
And the first call on it would be.
Because always the fear is that you liquidise those assets, get those funds, or we get the capital status and another 8 million, and the government in their wisdom say, all right, well, you're okay for cash now, so reduce our grant.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because I know from discussions with the Home Office yesterday, they trawl through these financial plans, they do that. So you do have to be sometimes careful what you show in a level of granularity.
You've got to tell them all good or bad pictures we've learned.
But to finish your question, though, the savings on revenue, so like on the utilities from getting rid of the building, then you would recycle that into the budget. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Just before we move on, I just want to ask a question on your 3 million. The 3 million in your police shortage in your police emergency fund. Have you got any? Are you concerned about that? Because obviously the budget has got a predicted shortfall, and you know how often does the force draw on that emergency fund? So if and when, what is the plan to replenish that?
So the plan at the moment is that the budget has got £500,000 in it every year to top it up.
Okay.
And that's happened the last couple of years. I'm not overly concerned about it.
Okay.
But the plan is there to top it up.
Okay.
So it's not one of the things that keeps me awake at night.
Okay.
My kids do that. But
No, I just
I'm not kept awake by that.
Yeah, no, I just wondered in the terms of some serious incidences, and then if you think about the wider climate issues and the climate issues and potential pull on emergency services during some of those, and just reflecting on the Monmouth flooding.
Yeah.
You know, it's likely to come from that emergency fund.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And the plan is to get back up to those recommended levels. As Dave has said, there has been a consistent plan to increase that. So yeah, you're absolutely right to us.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'll just talk very briefly now on the in-year financial position. So the Commissioner was presented with a P5 report a couple of months ago. And I've tried to summarise that in here for you. So I'm getting confused after I'm driving two computers. Good ask, is it? Right.
Multitasking.
So, I'll try and make that.
Drive away.
I'm trying to enlarge that us up there and okay. Again?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the budget for the current year. So that 400, that there, sorry, so 410 million was the budget for 25-26. So that was a figure that we used to project forward for the next 4 years. So you can see the big chunk there is police officers. Yeah, so they're paying pensions is huge amount. Police staff, the next largest amount. There are some staff mixed in with these are the figures as well, but the vast majority of our spend, 300 million straight away on police officers and police staff. The main variances are shown in this column here, and I always, this is the one column that I always, whenever I'm presented with these figures, I always look here. So that tells me what is going to be spent on something different than what was originally planned. So there's some pressures in here at the moment, or coming up in the next couple of years, where they haven't quite spent to plan. They've been able to use that little bit of flexibility that's there to earmark some money for pressures coming over the horizon. The chief mentioned the Euros.
Unforeseen.
Yeah. The chief mentioned the Euros, Cardiff Central as well, which we were just talking about. Something's got to be done with that, and the staff have got to be moved, so there's money.
Temporary accommodation.
Yeah. So I think I've broken that. Yeah, I've broken that down here. So there was.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't break. I have got the amount somewhere in my head, but I can't. I think it's about 3 for Cardiff and 2 for the Euros, and then a little bit for that there, which is ESN. So it is important, and it is something I discuss with Omar on a regular basis, because I'm trying to advocate on Emma's behalf and the local taxpayer, and I've got a statutory responsibility to make sure the force is effective as well. So we've got to find sort of balance in act. So I always go there and say, oh, well, you haven't spent all the budget. And then Omar will come back and say, oh, yeah, well, there's only 1%. So 400 million, or 500 gross, significant amount of money. So if there's 5 or 6, 7 million pound left over, it actually means we've spent 99% of the budget the way that we actually were intending to. So it's difficult to be too critical, and that flexibility is important, because otherwise you wouldn't have appeased the Euros effectively. You wouldn't be able to flex and think, actually, we've got to move over here to Cardiff now. Well, we demolished it, for example.
So you don't actually get any money from the people attending, from the stadiums and stuff like that?
We're able to charge for policing inside the footprint of the stadium, but outside, which arguably is wrong.
Yeah, and if you think about the demand on policing miles away from a stadium event, and actually what that would require in terms of resource, that is very underfunded in terms of what they are eligible to claim. And of course, for South Wales Police, that is, outside of the Euros, that is bread and butter events continuously with that level of demand.
I think I'm right in saying that even as a council, we don't get any extra funding to remove all the litter and trash and rubbish and everything else and highway stuff.
When I came with Corby for the Everest Festival, and the amount of rubbish left after that and things, and the police don't get any extra for that, do they?
No.
I would have thought resources would be significantly more outside of the stadium than in the stadium, actually. Because actually prevents
roads policing, policing roads infrastructure.
But it also picks up issues before they hit the stadium. So in a sense, it complements it, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
So that's the revenue budget, and then this is the capital budget for the year. So when the panel approved the budget setting in January 24. The capital programme was nearly 47 million. It's changed. It's actually the vast majority of the change, because when I first saw that, I thought, crikey, hang on, that doesn't sound right. Why is it gone up to 67? But there's been a change of accounting treatment around. So in the estates, where's it, 2 estates projects there, if you look there, you can see that's jumped up by 15. It's effectively the way we're accounting for the firearms range. So before, we were excluding the contribution and the costs that has been picked up by the other 2 local authorities, by the other 2 forces, but now that's in there. I can't remember why we had to do that off the top of my head, but that is in there. So that's the vast majority of that jump is to do with the firearms range, and then about 5 million worth of slippage from the prior year. So there's nothing underhand has gone on there. It's just purely technical accounting adjustment. We think at the moment the latest forecast is going to be slippage of around about 1.3, 1.4 million. So the intention at the moment is looking like it'll all be spent. And obviously the biggest project in there is the firearms range, and about 14. No. 12, nearly 13 million is the forces share firearms range. That's about it for capital. There are some other big items on there. That one, property maintenance. We talked about that 2.5 billion asset base, didn't we? Big chunk of that is buildings, and as you can imagine, it's a lot to keep it maintained. So I don't just mean heating and lighting. I mean, some of the walls have crumbled and might need replacing. The doors are hanging off, windows. So it's a lot to keep it running. And then the reserves, we touched a little bit on those when we were talking about the accounts as well. That line's significant as well. DRF funding of the capital programme, 14 million of it is actually from the revenue budget. And that's either a direct contribution to pay for assets, or you've got interest costs to finance as well. So capital significant. The rest of the report then, that talks. We've already seen that. That was in the presentation you've just seen. And then I just wanted to reiterate the governance arrangements around all these things as well. So there's a quarterly board which meets to monitor the capital budget. There's a quarterly resources board then that looks at revenue and capital as well. Commissioner's got an oversight board as well, with finances reported regularly, and really important as well. Omar and I, we've got a good working relationship. I catch up with him every fortnight to ask, sometimes planned questions, sometimes just completely off the cuff stuff. That doesn't always work in other force commissioners, so I think we are. Well, I'm lucky because I haven't got to deal with someone who doesn't agree with me all the time. So.
Do our subcommittee, our finance subcommittee you form now, will they have an opportunity to sit on them, not sit on them, but sort of.
I don't think the finance subcommittee will sit on any of these, but they will get information in a lot more detail than what you've had today.
Right.
Yeah. So it'll almost be the 2. I think you saw 2 slides today, didn't you? It said this is where we think the costs are going. This is the funding, and these are the pressures. So if that was 2 slides today, it'll probably be 15 that day. And then that obviously invites a whole host of questions that you.
Everything comes on there, all feed into our subcommittee.
The motivation behind establishing that subcommittee was the complexity of the budget and understanding what we were asking you to do in terms of supporting our decisions or cases to be made needed for you to go on the granularity of that journey. So you will have feedback from those meetings.
To look at all these reports and try and digest it. And the last subcommittee doing that on our behalf is so useful.
And one of the reflections actually was linked to your capital question. after one of our visits, I believe it was to Watertown and all the work that was being developed
Yeah,
there. We
on
really
that, yes.
wanted to have
Yeah.
insight, so hence
That
that
was
was one of the reasons behind it, wasn't it? Rather than be part of the governance structure.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
Polish my shoes on, you still smell members of that one sometimes.
That was it. Just I'd like to ask to consider the recommendations and approve the report, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah got a
Just a
question.
point of information, going back to the revenue budget, just note that the Office of the Police and Crime Commission is a quite significant variant there, and I just wondered, not the detail of it, but just some understanding of why that was. Was there additional funding put in? Was there?
Sorry, did you say you thought there was a variance there?
I thought, yes, on.
We're showing break even there.
No, I've got that wrong.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
move on.
Okay.
Next slide.
Okay, yeah, that was it from me.
So we all happy to note the recommendations, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this one goes to you now. Appointment of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah, so just wanted to introduce, you will see in your paperwork that we went through a recruitment process in the autumn, and I'm delighted to say that I've made the decision to appoint Mitch Seeker, and you will have had the opportunity to look at Mitch's background and experience in terms of what's fed into why it is I feel that Mitch is an added asset and value to our team. I'm not going to speak for Mitch. I thought it'd be useful if you wanted to introduce yourself and give a bit of your background. Then the panel any opportunity to ask any questions of Mitch and or of me and Lee in relation to appointment process before asking you to endorse and support the decision. So, Mitch, can I hand over to you first of all?
Thank you. Well, diolch yn fawr iawn am y cyfle i fod yma heddiw. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet you all today. My name is Mitch Seeker. A bit of personal background is that I was born in the Rhondda, raised in Pontyclun, studied in Swansea, where I also started off as a councillor and a cabinet member for opportunities for children and young people. Very much raised in a politically active household, very strong unionists, very strong Labour Party folks, and I was raised on very strong values by my mother for social justice, which has very much stayed with me throughout my career and pretty much defined all the roles that I've had since then. And I've been really fortunate to be able to serve the public in various ways. First, as I mentioned, was as a councillor and a cabinet member for Swansea Council, where I looked a lot at prevention and early intervention and preventing the criminalisation of young people, preventing them getting into the criminal justice system in the first place, looking at strengthening our youth services across Swansea, and at the merger of the youth offending services, with a focus of trying to preserve as much as possible the really strong work Swansea was doing on prevention and early intervention. After a short stint overseas then and back in university, I ran a couple of campaigns here in Wales. One was the campaign for Vaughan Gething's first leadership election, and the second was the People's Vote campaign for a second referendum, which is very much a cross-party campaign. So I was really pleased to lead a relatively party politically neutral campaign. And we were the first in the UK to be able to set up a cohesive cross-party collaborative board, which was something that I was really proud that we were able to do. And then following that, I was invited by First Minister Mark Rhagfyr to be a special advisor focusing on social justice. So working very much with Jane Hutt, who I'm pleased to say is still the Social Justice Minister. And together we focused with her leadership very much on tackling violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, as well as supporting our police in terms of increasing PCSO numbers, and through tackling racism and the LGBTQ+ action plan, which was the first of its kind by the Welsh Government. And I was really pleased then to be asked to come on board as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, where the Commissioner has asked me to focus on a few key areas. So one of them being scrutiny, another one being the precept, another one is around capital city funding, which hopefully we'll make progress on relatively soon. So we'll see how successful that is in the short term. Yeah, absolutely. And then another area is around community cohesion, hate crime, misinformation, disinformation, which obviously we've had a good conversation about today, and which I know the Commissioner is very eager for me to get stuck into. So that'll be a core focus of mine over the next couple of weeks before Christmas as well. So that's everything from me. Sorry, that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. And diolch yn fawr again. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Anybody got any questions?
I could ask a question.
Are we asking Mitch or
All right,
Mitch first, or then we go back to the Commissioner?
So just to clarify, asked to come on board, or you went through the process, obviously?
An appointment process, there was an advert that was run during the
Yeah, I've
summer
seen the
months.
advert and everything else, but it's just comments, you were asked to come on board, so.
Asked after the process, and he'd managed to demonstrate the skills, experience and knowledge. So yeah, no, we ran an open recruitment process, took 5 people through to interview. You will note that my original intention had been to have a job share arrangement that was with the original ambition being a potential of increase in skills mix and potentially resource across the force footprint. And unfortunately, in terms of candidates that met the requirement, and of course you will understand from a job share perspective, you need to find 2 people then who are complementary in terms of skills mix. I took the decision to go forward with just one, and that was Mitch's appointment. So at the moment, Mitch is working with us part-time, and I'm going to keep that under review then in terms of what is needed by way of business requirements going forward. You'll also notice quite a while into my tenure in terms of making the decision to appoint a deputy, and that's because I wanted to take my time in terms of reorganising the current team and properly understanding what was the complementary skills mix that I needed, not just to support my statutory officers and the rest of the team, but also then to complement me. And I hope from what you've heard in terms of Mitch's background, you can see that resonates with a lot of the priorities that I've got set out in my police crime and justice plan, and the complementary ability then from a policy perspective, not just at a local level, but a Wales level, and from a political perspective as well. So
I don't know what time in the process you decided you run with 2 deputies, or was that decided before you?
No, so after we'd interviewed everybody, having had deliberations and discussion then about who was the top scoring and strongest candidate, and then whether or not there was a second person that made that jigsaw puzzle fit. It was determined that we didn't quite have that fit, hence the fact then after the interviews I determined to go forward with Mitch, who, as I said, was the highest scoring candidate out of the process.
Could I just add, just for the panel's awareness, that the Commissioner doesn't actually have to go through a full recruitment process.
Yeah. No, we've read that,
somebody,
we're here to note.
But Commissioner took the view, I'm sure Mitch would have liked it, it would be easier not to have gone through it, but we did go through an actual sort of process as you would any other recruitment process.
Yeah, that's laid out in the report. Great.
Yeah, and it's important that we did, as well as, you know, for me, I wanted to understand what skills mix experience and interest there was in the office before, you know, that helps you consolidate your thinking at the end. So the process was as valuable as I'm hoping the appointment will be at the end.
Any other questions?
No, not really, no.
No.
That's it, everything.
Thank you. Before I ask if you are happy to endorse, I think there is an air of disappointment amongst the panel that perhaps we weren't informed of the recruitment process, and perhaps whilst we know this about being noted, We probably would have liked to have been informed prior, perhaps in the September meeting of the recruitment process. I've been asked to express that feeling today.
Yeah, no,
So,
point noted, and
Okay.
apologies that wasn't, I wasn't communicated to you in a timely fashion.
thank you. So is everyone happy to endorse and support the decision today?
Happy to note, as we're
Happy to
required
note.
to do it, yeah.
We can endorse as well?
Yeah.
Yeah? No, done it?
Yeah.
Can I have a
No
show of
problem.
hands, please?
Bill can't because he left the meeting.
Oh,
during
Bill,
the course
sorry,
of the-
pal.
Sorry, Mr. Say.
You can't vote.
You can't vote on this particular item because you didn't. hear the
Oh,
full
no
debate.
problem. Sorry, no problem.
Can we have a show of hands then? If we're all happy to support, or would we prefer, we can, if we want, we do have the power to hold a private meeting. So are we happy to support?
I'm happy to support.
Yeah?
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a supplementary to that? I'm not sure I understand it exactly. So you're looking for a job share, didn't appoint on a job share basis. Does that mean that going forward, Mitch will continue to work part-time? Is it?
I said Mitch is working part-time at
Yeah.
the moment, as was the intention
Yes.
in terms of the advert. I will keep that under review then
Right,
as
okay.
to whether there is merits in terms of any kind
Okay,
of
that's fine.
recruitment or
I thought that's
extending
what
hours.
I understood, but
Yeah.
I wasn't clear. Thank you.
Is the part-time because you've got other commitments, or is it because it's the roles?
It was because that's the original job share I'd gone
Right,
out
okay.
on, so hence the fact it's just so that I've got the opportunity then, and Mitch has, in terms of landing, settling, understanding where the needs are, and as I've said, I'm continuously wanting to respond to what is the business need of the office, as opposed to just appointments full time for appointments.
Will, and I'll come back to you then. Will, I'll come back to you then, Carl.
Chair, sorry I didn't vote Mitch because I had to go down with a coughing fit. But we spent the day together selling poppies. That's the only one.
Fantastic.
We're at the Tesco.
Oh, yeah.
So Caroline,
Yeah, just a
Sorry.
contrary, my concern is if the appointment is now part-time and it was advertised as part-time, but you do become full-time, would you have been open to a lot more people applying if they knew that there was a possibility of full-time? That's the only concern I have, that you might have had a varied response to it, maybe, if it was the full-time position.
Yeah, that's potential, but I suppose in any appointment process, once you have appointed, there is always the option to vary a role as you go through in terms of business demand, of which would have been different to the original advert. So as I said, I'm going to keep under review in terms of what is needed and how we can best utilise Mitch's skills, knowledge and experience.
so congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank
Welcome on board.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to the next agenda item then, I think this might be back to you, our annual report.
I am going to hand straight over to my Chief Executive.
Thanks, panel. As you know, I think I don't want to repeat myself completely. I think the last panel meeting, I shared some hard copies of this. I was hoping that it would have been on the previous panel meeting. So we asked whether there would be any feedback between the last panel and this panel on the annual report. But just to summarise, this year, because it was Commissioner's first year, it was more about setting up the new plan. And then, but what we have done as well, we've managed some business as usual. So some of the highlights as well, which we have in the cover report, are things that we've covered off today as well in terms of the Safer Streets investments, the hotspot funding, the commitments to neighbourhood policing, the reduction in knife crime and violence crime. I think you picked up on that as a question before. A lot of that is facilitated through the Violence Reduction Unit, which is attached to our unit as well, supporting the police. Sorry, you're all looking confused in terms of, it's item 7?
Yeah, item 7, all right.
You've got the most there, Lee, if you want to just scroll down. It's underneath this report.
Where am I on my doing? Which one? No, it's
24.
No, it's gone. Not even touching it, not even touching it.
That's the budget commitment.
There we go, I've quickly gone through it.
Thank you.
It's one of those days.
Might want to use the rock. Is there a rocker on there?
Yeah, I was trying doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go, it's working now. I think that was the problem. Sorry, I was just going, so there's a cover report in there. I was just going through the highlights there. Even though this was a transition year, I think it's just important to note that the team as well, supporting the commissioner, a lot of focus was on the development of the plan. And we've gone through that at previous meetings in relation to the amount of public engagement that we've conducted in order to shape the plan. That includes working with the force as well. Within this, there has been the development of the Children and Young Persons Plan as well, which is an important thread through the Commissioner's priorities. But we have maintained delivery as well with the team, particularly where I think someone asked the question earlier about specific grant funding that comes in addition to the settlement figures, all of which comes through our office. Some of that is the more targeted work that you'll have within your local authority areas. Just, it's not in the report, but just to highlight, in terms of funding from this office, I know for this year, I think there is over 2 million that goes into each of the local authority areas. It will vary, but that is made up of money that comes from community safety funding, the violence reduction funding specifically to your area. We have victims funding as well, so that will focus on specific areas such as violence against women and girls, which I know as a panel you've all been very supportive of. Hence you've seen some of the work there around stalking, sexual violence, domestic abuse. So it translates into very real people that we've been able to support through the year. So the annual report this year, as I said, is there for your consideration. I know we circulated it last time. It is high level in terms of, scroll down now, it's all the legal stuff. So this is the report was circulated last time. I won't go through page by page because I know you've had the opportunity to have a look at it, and I'd rather take some questions if you have any. What I would say, if I could draw your attention to a couple of areas there, one of the things we have established in order to monitor progress through this year and indeed next year was on page 43 or page of your pack, I should say. It's we've established a Police, Crime and Justice Programme Planning and Delivery Board. That is, within that, we've established a performance framework as well to be able to review the progress against the Commissioner's 5 priorities, be able to demonstrate, evidence in addition to the sort of highlighted areas that you've got there. And I want to be able to translate the delivery of the plan so it's into sort of meaningful activities that make sense, because I'm conscious if we just provide data of, X number of people supported, it may not have the impact that you're looking for. Obviously, we will have the challenges of the next 2 years about how we operate now within the environment that's landed on us. So there will be some work that we'll be working with the Commissioner, with the office and the officers in there, how we narrow down the priorities as well, because some of our funding streams we know will have to come into an end in 2028. So, but we don't know which things will transfer over to the new organisation. Some of these things as well, we might have to consider our recommissioning, for example. Some which used to be aware, knowing we might have a limited timeline. So, but we will be reporting back. We have to produce the annual report each year. We will continue to do that. The office, I'm very pleased with the attitude of the staff in the team to continue to deliver these priorities. But so the report is there. As I said, it's a bit of a transition report. Those of you who've been before would have seen annual reports previously. We're already gathering more data for next year's report. I think through our continued engagement with yourselves, we will continue to report as we go through the year anyway. But I'll leave it there with you rather than go page by page, Chair. But if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Do all then, Sean.
Oh, thank you. You mentioned knife crime. Yeah. We've got a bit of an issue in Bridgend with gun crime at the minute. So is that going to be tackled as well? Would that come under the same?
If it's part of the violent crime, yes, it would be. But obviously, it would be very operational. There'll be a very operational. So
it was the organised crime element. It was.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that would be an operational, an operational question, but if there is an issue with it, then of course it would be, I think the chief mentioned that gun crime were fortunate not to be as big an issue as it is in other parts of the country, but it would be significantly on the
But
radar.
I didn't think we had a problem with them in Bridgend until recently,
So-
until the arrest took place and stuff. And they'd all the people who got arrested are locals and everybody knows them. It was a bit of a shocker, to be honest.
So as Lee correctly said, we can take that back in terms of an operational question to the Chief Constable, and we know that there is significant work going on behind the scenes, as he's described, in terms of tackling organised crime groups. At a strategic level, only yesterday, I convened a serious violence summit, which was reflecting, although overall violence is going down, there are some areas of violence that are becoming more complex, more concerning. So rather than being complacent and pull together all of the statutory bodies and the serious violence duty to talk about how we were going to set up a force-wide regional board with a regional plan in terms of reinvigorating our cooperation to tackle some of those issues. So just to reassure you on a strategic point that there is absolute focus in terms of continuing investment and understanding of what we can do to improve the violence picture, and I'm more than happy, as I've offered before, to come back for a thematic discussion so that we can get into the skin of some of that in any future panel meetings.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, but is there adequate resources being put into the staff that will be looking to end contracts, looking for other jobs, that sort of thing, when the term comes to an end? Because I think that's important definitely to support those people.
Yeah,
Absolutely, the primary aim of mine. This was a shock to everyone. So we're literally 2 weeks into knowing what the position is. So as the Commissioner said, there are two aspects to this. There is the commitment to continue to deliver responsibilities, statutory responsibilities over the next 2 years. But as Chief of Staff and responsible for the staff, that is my primary concern. On a personal level, I'm quite annoyed with the way it's landed. The decision's the decision, it's not political, but there was no formal engagement with me as Chief Executive or any Chief Executive across the 43 forces in relation to the impact. There's real people behind this, and I've got a real concern for that. So that is a key focus for me about how we support and manage the staff through it. But as I said, they are dealing with it very well. They totally understand. I think there will be an alternative model, so we will see what that is, and very much with the Commissioner's leadership, we are working on what that may look like. I simply don't know the sort of answers we're getting from the Home Office at the moment. Well, we're not getting any answers from the Home Office, but we are working very hard to give you a reassurance in terms of so we can maintain delivery of some really important issues. But also thank you for your question in terms of the staff. That is a concern, obviously, and it's a focus for us as a senior leadership team.
I think let's be clear when we say we're grateful to our leadership for continuing to push the cause.
Yeah.
And thank you. That does mean a lot. And just to echo the focus on the team is absolutely paramount. And we as a senior team will be meeting this side of Christmas to apply what we do know in terms of the stock take in what will be our forward priorities and what resource do we need to set aside to manage the transition, because it's still wheels turning, business as usual, whilst there will be a requirement, and a requirement that I want to seize in terms of opportunity to influence what comes next for Wales. And the one important thing I do want to note is that I found that some of the headline messaging around the decision has been incredibly unhelpful, and certainly in my view not reflective of the really hard work that I see being done day in, day out in terms of the staff in my office and the staff of the commissioners across Wales and other parts of the country. And I'm going to make it my mission as well to improve the way in which we are articulating some of the impacts and contributions that the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner has in terms of policing and community safety more broadly. So anything that you can do as a panel in supporting me in that regard, or in terms of your day capacity as elected members, that would be gratefully received, because I think it's important for the public to understand that what they have had their faith in and what they continue to have their faith in over the next 2.5 years actually does deliver and makes a significant contribution.
I think it's important that so I think it's important that politicians need to understand that the policing in Wales needs a decision quickly on what the legacy is going to be after the commission.
Sarah?
And just following on from what Sean said, is there any understanding of a timetable in place for when there'll be more information? I think you're smiling.
It's incredibly fluid. Like, I have to say, it's incredibly fluid, and a huge amount of time over the last week and a bit has been taken up with conversations. What we do know is, as I've said, for the next few weeks, the white paper will report. There is an intention by the UK government at the beginning of January to have stood up transition boards, so an infrastructure that will help manage this. Running in parallel to that, we in Wales are also mobilising ourselves, because we are in a slightly different position, which I do feel is a positive opportunity in government's recognition that we are different. We have a landscape that there is elements of it that really need to be preserved, and we are working really hard to come off dialogue with the Cabinet Secretary of Social Justice yesterday, continuously speaking about how we might influence that design. So again, as soon as I'm hoping we will have a more consolidated picture in terms of timelines, both locally and nationally. And so by the time we come back to you as a panel in February, happy to either lay that as just some basic information in terms of timetabling, or speak to that after our main input.
I'm sure I speak for the panel, but I think we would really want to support that process, individually and collectively. And I think that maybe get an update with that, as and when you know that, in order that we might convene a special, an online session or something like that, that we can think of how we push back, because it does feel as though the way that it has been released is this is what's going to be happening in England, and Wales, and it's just, that just feels so disrespectful and so ignorant of the particular circumstances that we find ourselves in Wales. We can't just fall into the model that's being presented. It's been designed particularly for the processes in England.
And we are definitely getting the mood music and the intention from the UK government that there is scope to influence, and we are jumping into that space to seize the opportunity. So anything that you can do, we'll come back, keep you updated anyway as a panel, because of course this also impacts on you as being part of policing governance and governance and oversight of me. And of course you will have your own reflections about what works, what hasn't worked, and thinking to input into the new model. So thank you, A, for all your comments, and B, for your want to be engaged with this process.
Any more questions? No? Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you. And we will welcome the updates around the potential model. And biggest welcome is hopefully you will have a massive influence in designing the new model. And the other thing we would like to note, which was raised as a concern, is your commitment to stay until the end of May 2028. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm absolutely focused on, I've been elected to deliver the priorities I set out in my plan, and I'm not going to let the public down. I understand that is a privilege to have been put in this position. So I'm absolutely focused 100%.
So thank you very much. I don't think there's any other business.
Chair,
I don't have any.
Technically, we have to take a vote from the panel as to whether or not we agree the contents of the report. So I think we can do that. We can do it with or without recommendations. Of course, this is the first report that you have done. Last year, we made a recommendation that future reports contain enough information to allow the panel to monitor and assess progress on the plan when compared to the previous year's plan. But of course, this is your first plan. So I'm just wondering whether or not, as a recommendation, we reiterate that next year's plan has this ability for us to compare and contrast.
Well, welcome that. That keeps us focused in terms of the new performance framework that Lee and the team have developed and introduced, and continuously means that we can baseline then against progress. So absolutely welcome that recommendation.
Anyway, is there any other recommendations that the panel would like put in there, or are you happy just to say what I just?
Quite happy.
Okay. We'll take a vote on that. Then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in favour?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there, any other business around the table for the last agenda item? No? Closes the meeting.
Jay, you
Thank you all
done
very
well.
much.
You done
Welcome, Chair.
You're the bag of nerves and you done well.
Well done, Deputy Chair. You done really well.
Is this you will be recording now?
Yeah, nice one, then.
I am, I've got a programme. I've not
No,
thought
don't.
about that yet. Although I know I've seen you, I thought, other than that, I don't know where, I don't know what time.
Well, you're right
But I'll
now.
be there.
Yeah, you've got